Warning: the following podcast contains graphic content that may be disturbing or triggering to some listeners. Discretion is advised. The Papa Tango Delta Sierra podcast is available free of charge thanks to the support of Cracked Armor. Their mission is to raise awareness for PTSD, TBI, and mental health to support those who struggle. By creating an army of warriors who represent the gear, their hope is that it will send the message to others that they are not alone. Go to crackedarmor.com, say hi to Mark Long, read about the story, find some research information about PTSD, and support the cause by buying some gear.
(10-9) Did you say Papa Tango Sierra Delta? 10-4.
There's so much left to do, so many things I wanna say, and I say, don't make the change. If it rains every single day, I'll fight to blow it all away.
This is episode 6 of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast. My name is Larry Payton, and I have been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress. Since being diagnosed with CPTSD, I spent a lot of time on introspection, ultimately trying to figure out what the hell led me to where I am today. What caused this? Upon reflection, I've certainly witnessed a number of horrible things. There's no denying. But there's not one that stands out as being, yeah, that was what got me. There's several that do stand out as particularly more impacting than others, but not a single episode that I can say, yeah, that's what got me where I am now. One of the things I know that has brought me to where I am now is being alone. My first post was a small town in Alberta. Being from a city on the east coast of the country, it was quite a culture shock going there. But I loved it. I was proud. I was excited. Of course I was. Whole new adventure. Go west, young man. And I went, full of piss and vinegar as you'd expect. Spent 3 weeks working with another member as my field trainer. And I'll never forget when, after that third week, he said, okay, you get to pick out whatever vehicle you want to drive this weekend. And I thought that was awesome. I am 100% taking a Suburban. Boom. You're going to have to drive one of the cars. And he said, no, I won't be. I don't understand, was my reply. And I didn't. I really didn't get it. I mean, let's go back. My dad was a police officer for 30 years with the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary. I remember doing ride-alongs, and if anything happened, backup would be called, and there'd be a lot of members attend to make sure things were safe for the public and the member. It was policing. That's all I knew. But things were different where I was posted, and I had no understanding of that concept. I was told I could pick out whatever vehicle I wanted, because at this detachment, we work alone. Well, it meant exactly what it sounds like. You worked your shifts alone. It was just you. Backup was at the next detachment, which for me was about 45 minutes away. And so though I admit the call volume was lower than it would be in a major center, we still got the same kind of calls. And I still had to go deal with them alone. One of the things that stands out was the first fatal motor vehicle collision I attended. I was the first one on scene, got there ahead of the fire department. It was dark. I think it was around 2300 or 0000 hours. It was pitch black, and it was so hard to see anything. So I recall I was standing over the victim, who was obviously deceased. And I just stood there. It's funny, just talking about this has given me numbness in the top of my head. It's one of my reactions to a trigger. The fire department arrived. They brought out some lights, which certainly helped me get a better idea of the scene. It was a single vehicle, a single occupant who had been ejected. It was a pretty nasty scene, but the biggest thing that I recall is, again, I was alone. That night, once the scene was cleared, I had to attend the home of the deceased and provide my first next of kin notification. It was about 0300 hours. I had to tell his mom, and I did that alone. It's kind of things that stay with you. I spent a little over 4 years there and worked mostly alone. I mean, day shifts, the surge would be there. There might be a member coming and doing some extra files, but most of the time you worked alone. And that's definitely left some scars. One of the things I really hate now is being startled. And I remember some nights it would just be quiet. You could see the northern lights in the distance. Nothing was moving on a frigid winter night. There was no coffee shop you could go to. It was just quiet. And when dispatch would check in on me to make sure everything was okay, that squawk in the radio would have me leap out of my seat. It's odd how some things stick with you like that. You know, I can go on and on about being alone, but it's definitely been something that's stood out with me. And I think a big reason why I've never talked to anyone about it. I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. There was no one. I certainly wasn't going to go home and speak to my wife about it. The other thing with working in a small town was that it was very much like living in a fishbowl. Everybody knew who you were. Most people there were great. Some were not. But everyone knew where you lived, what your wife looked like, how many kids you had, what they looked like, everything. It's a small town. I just always needed to be on alert, which leads one to be hypervigilant, oftentimes overstimulated by the amount of information that you're now trying to process because you see everything as a threat cue. I think that's a big reason as well now why I have trouble sleeping, because I feel alone. I can't go to bed the same time everyone else does. Need to be more tired. Need to have another little wallop of my bourbon. But when I do go to bed, I'm alone. But this all leads me to recently comprehending the importance of support, of backup, of having your six and you having mine. Something I went a long time without, which meant that I only really ever depended on myself. It was my job to take care of everybody. Fuck, who am I kidding? I still think that's my job. But I never felt that anyone else was there to help me. And again, that's why I think I just kept putting every shitty incident or thought or memory under the rug. Just sweep it under the rug. And something happened about 2.5 years ago that just all of a sudden was like the wind that lifted up that rug. And all that shit came out at once. And I was not expecting that. I was not prepared for that. But it was there. And I tried to just deal with it on my own. In hindsight, things were quickly going downhill. As much as I felt like I had a grip, I did not. And I didn't have anyone watching my six either. Just felt completely alone again. Thankfully, I had a conversation with a teammate who really helped me open up and realize the importance of talking about this stuff. And I'm very grateful for him. I'll always owe him for that. The point I'm trying to make is that you can't keep sweeping everything under the rug, because at some point, the wind is going to turn your way and pick it all up and throw it all out there for you to try to face simultaneously. That's tough. How do you prevent that? Don't sweep shit under the rug. Talk about it. Get help. That is the point of this podcast. I am exposing my inner self, my mental health, to try and help you get over the barriers that have been placed before you. You need to talk about it. Speak to a colleague. Speak to a friend. Seek out a psychologist, a psychiatrist. Speak to your family doctor. Speak to your priest, your minister. Who gives a shit? Speak. Talk about it. It will help you accept it. You have nothing to feel guilty about, nothing to feel ashamed about, nothing to be embarrassed about. These are scars that you have earned because of all the sacrifices you have made. So if you're concerned of trolls and negative friggin' assholes, just remember this. There's only one way to avoid criticism. Do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. Otherwise, you're gonna be criticized by someone at some point. Fuck 'em. The avoidance of their criticisms is not worth your health. It's not worth your time. It's not worth what you wipe your ass with. I read that the amount of healing a person requires depends on how alone they felt during the trauma, not its severity. Sure, this can come back full circle in my particular situation. Being alone, working alone, not having backup, not having my six covered. But there's a much more global consideration to this. Because if you are suffering in silence, you are reliving that trauma, and you are alone. Which means things can just get more difficult. Don't be alone. We're not meant to be alone. It doesn't mean you have to like everybody. I know I don't. But you're not meant to be alone. So talk. Contact somebody. Speak out. Be okay with yourself. And stop being alone. Let's take a break.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you have experience with post-traumatic stress and would like to join me for an episode, please reach out to me. You can contact me via direct message on Instagram, PTSD_podcast, or you can send me an email at Papa Tango Sierra Delta Podcast @gmail.com. Cheers.
This episode of the Papa Tango Sierra Delta podcast is brought to you thanks to the support and financial sponsorship of Cracked Armor. Go to crackedarmor.com, read the story, buy the gear, wear it to send the message to others who are struggling that they're not alone. Also to Willow Tree Firms, care of Jason Sobkowicz, another member who is struggling with PTSD and who updates his Instagram frequently to share his story. You can follow him at jason.sobkowicz. Thanks for coming back from the break. Quite happy to have this guest on board. His name is Mo Shaukat. Mo is with Boots on the Ground in Alberta. Now we're going to talk about that. Before we get going too deep into it, I want to talk first about your background and what led you to being a part of Boots on the Ground. It's an anonymous helpline where first responders and military members can share with someone with similar experiences. So you're talking to someone who has been through the shit, for lack of a better term. Mo, tell us about your background, brother.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me first of all, Larry, and hi to all your listeners. Well, I'm a federal correctional officer, draft training officer to be specific, and I'm an Army Reservist and a few other things under my belt. Yeah, I came to Canada from Pakistan a few years ago. Well, more than a few years ago now. 2006, I want to say. Finished my high school in Ontario. Went to the States, commuting between Canada and US for a degree in criminal justice. And then went to BC. Did multiple jobs there, including my first taste of first responder world, which was with Abbotsford Fire Rescue Service as a part-time firefighter. Then I got picked up by Corrections Service Canada back in 2012. Was sent to Saskatoon for training, which we call Correctional Training Program, CTP, or core training. From there, I was posted to Edmonton Max, beginning of 2013.
There's a lot that's gone through Edmonton Max.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's general consensus amongst federal correctional officers, like the Edmonton Max, oh my God, like that's the first thing you hear. Where are you going? Like it happens in core.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Edmonton. Ooh, you always hear that. But man, it was the best place to work. Like I freaking loved it. Like work is work. It's shit on a lot of days, but you had the best teams, like you become close to people in tough times. And yeah, we had tough times, but we all held each other and we made sure all of us went home safe and sound. And guys still continue to do this all around the country, but Edmonton had a special place in my heart, Like I loved it there, and that's my jam. Then 2019, I got elected to be a trainer, which is like purely training. Like that's your primary job, and that's the only thing you do. I had pretty much transferred to Bowdoin because I knew Edmonton did not have a position for a trainer, and there's like only 2, 3, 4 trainers per site. I transferred to Bowdoin Institution, which is a medium And then I was inside, like behind the fence, we call it, behind the fence, there for maybe 2 months before I got sent away for my CX3 training, which was a couple of months. And I was in PEI for that, so your neck of the woods.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, then I came back and, I finished the course sort of like, I think, like December 15th or something, and I was working as a trainer like 2 days later. So, however, now starts the mental health journey of things. Like I said, Edmonton was great to me. I loved Edmonton. It was a very active site, for lack of a better term, and I'll let you decipher whatever you want out of that. But it was a very active site, but I loved it. You're either a person built for Edmonton Max or you're not, or any Max really, or you're not. And I was, and that was my jam. I loved it there. That was, every day was great. I felt great about what I did. Every day I came home and I was happy. I was satisfied. I was happy. Yeah, there were, shit times. End of the day, it is just like any other agency. In fact, it's a little different than any other agency. Any other agency, your chief has been through the constable phase, let's say, right? But not necessarily in CSC. Security staff like us, we sometimes don't understand everything that happens up top because, it's a civilian organization with a security component, with a uniform component. That's us. But anyhow, so then when I came to Bowdoin and then eventually into training, well, something that nobody warned me about was the adrenaline crash that I was going to have. And I think that's what happened with me. Like at first I didn't know like what was wrong. Like I was always angry. Like there's nothing going on at work. Like work is chill. Days were extremely long when I was working. Right, like it was like in Edmonton you didn't have time to freaking sometimes have your lunch. Days were long, but it was but you needed a different set of skills that I didn't really have. The set of skills of communication with the inmates. With more corrections. Let's put it that way. More corrections at Bowdoin happens, which I'd never really experienced. Yeah, we had talked about it at my core training and we had talked about it at different trainings, but it doesn't really, I wasn't used to all of that. So when we get to Bowdoin now, I have to do that. Now it felt like I didn't know the job. All of a sudden I didn't know the job. In fact, I remember my first 2-3 weeks, an inmate came up to me. I thought I knew everything about freaking corrections or forms that we had, but an inmate comes up to me asking me for a specific thing. And I thought he thought that I'm the new guy, so let's pick on the new guy. And I thought he just thought I was stupid,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in my head, I was like pretty much like, what the fuck, like I'm not a new guy here. I'm just a new face around Bowdoin. But then later I found out, no, that actually exists. That inmate was asking me a legit question. So that's my fault. I didn't learn, but that was a culture shock, right? And then then started like your identity is gone all of a sudden. Like I don't know, I had experience, and now all of a sudden a lot of it is irrelevant. Like what the hell happened, right? And then I was starting to get angry, and I was mad at myself and not wanting to be there kind of deal. And then you get into training. Yes, one of the most sought after position in CSC, but there's no, for the lack of better term, action in it, right? Like
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
you're dealing with law-abiding citizens at that point. So I love what I do. I love to teach, but end of the day, I go home and I don't think I've made a difference. Like, yeah, one day it's whatever I taught an officer is going to, help them in doing their job or keep them safe, keep inmates safe, keep public safe, whatever. One day. It's not today. It may not be today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people don't think about, or what's not discussed is you move into, it doesn't have to be anything bad that happened that causes any injury to you. It could be something good. It could be a promotion. You move up within the ranks and now you're not in the field. Now you are not with your bros, like anymore. Because when I was inside the fence, I worked with like hundreds of officers and everybody was, if not my best friend, at least, somebody I could hang out with or at work. Now I work with two great people, right? Like my partners are great, but that camaraderie is gone. You're the forgotten guy, right? Like your guys come and see you like 5-7 days a year to get all their training done, and that's it. And then it's the end of that. Or if you're gone to teach core, like TCTP, well, you see these recruits and then they go to their respective institutions and that's it. Again, I want to say that, yeah, it's the best job there is. Don't get me wrong, I love my job, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have an effect on you. So I had that. And then I got thinking I wanted to volunteer more. I wanted to get busy. I wanted to get my mind off things, which is, I understand, a distraction technique, but I wanted to get my mind off things. And back in 2019, really, maybe early 2020, I started looking at different things, what I'm going to do to get my mind off things, like the things that I didn't do in Edmonton. None of it negative. I went back to school to get a master's just to, I don't know, get busy, get some rush in my life, I guess.
Wow. People typically pick up golf or something, and you went back and got a master's, right?
Yeah, I needed something. I don't know. It's something challenging. I don't know. Now when I look back and I go, why did I do all that? And now it's starting to make sense, where I was like, I needed something to keep my mind off of things. At that time, also, I came across Boots on the Ground, which already existed in Ontario. Boots on the Ground was a thing. It was a peer support group. And I was like, wow, I read their mission and everything. And I was like, this is awesome. I had done critical incident stress management at Edmonton. So this was my thing. Like, after a critical incident, I love to be the listening ear.
Yeah, there's not enough of those, Mo, so that's great.
Yeah, for my peers, hell yeah, I was always there, right? Like, I encouraged them to talk to me. Like, I'd never pushy, but, I encouraged them to talk to me. And I understood that people go through things, right? So I'd done that at Edmonton. So when I saw that, the similar mission with Boots on the Ground, I was like, hell yeah, I want to do this. So I applied. I wanted to become their volunteer. So I, sent them an email. They said, well, we don't operate in Alberta. They were only operating in Ontario. But it always stayed in the back of my head. I was like, whenever that organization comes to Alberta, I'm going to join it. I started getting more and more interested in mental health stuff by seeking out some great guys who were already doing something, who weren't waiting for the government, the employer, anybody to do something about our people's mental health. They went out and did it themselves. The first one being Mark Long from Cracked Armor. I think that's the first guy I started following, and from there, many other avenues opened. Like, got acquainted with John from Wired Differently and Grant from Honey Badger Lance. Like, avenues started opening, and I started, then you got to hang out with the kind of people that inspire you, really, and right crowd. So that was the crowd that I had, and I was like, okay, love their company, love their mission, all that. How can I help? What can I do? Hey, I could spearhead this Boots on the Ground in Alberta. Like, I've been waiting for them to come. Like, why not I do it myself? So that thought popped in my head. I wasn't doing anything under a banner of anything, but I started arranging for funds to do some mental health stuff for correctional officers, for other agencies in the area of Central Alberta. And just one thing led to another, which was I arranged a public speaking event for Dr. Stacey Furlan with Calgary Police Service for mental health stuff. I can't remember the exact name of her unit, but I arranged her speaking event in Innisfil, Alberta. It was well attended. Officers from Bowdoin were there, officers from Edmonton were there, Drumheller were there, like different people. And when I was setting that up, somebody messaged from Boots on the Ground in Ontario and said, hey, can you live stream this? Yeah, I'm like, you know what? Good idea. I'll keep in mind for the next time, but not this time. Oh, by the way, always wanted to volunteer with you guys. He goes, how about I give your contact to the president, Dave McLennan? How about he reaches out to you? You guys could discuss something. And sure enough, Dave reached out. We talked. Then we decided to bring Boots on the Ground to Alberta, which was in September of 2022. So
yeah, I'd say it was good timing as well, given the pandemic, and there was a lot of people struggling. I mean, to go back to what you said earlier, Mo, just in terms of moving from Edmonton Max and then heading over to Borden, you found that camaraderie break. A lot of people, including myself, went from a team working in an office all the time or working in a group all the time to all of a sudden being alone all the time, which, I mean, it seems fine. It seems great. However, you do miss that camaraderie, and the camaraderie you don't realize is even sometimes just talking about the shit that goes on in your head that they can at least understand, as opposed to, speaking to a loved one that hasn't had those horrible experiences. So I definitely,
100%.
Yeah, I understand that difference about not having that anymore. And I'm sure, in 2022, that was a great time to come in. and actually have this started, because there's absolutely no doubt in my mind there was more people struggling.
Yep, 100%. Like you said, you know what? The camaraderie and being with your group. Like, I'll just give you a quick example. We had a major incident. Now, this was when I was still in Edmonton, and it turned my shift into a 22-hour shift. Fortunately, I would say, I think the previous to the incident day, there was a concert or something. A lot of my unit guys were gone to the concert, and they didn't show up to work the next day. Well, which was kind of a good thing for me, because after my 22-hour shift, which, they would have been part of had they been there, I went to the manager and I said, okay, I'm going to go home. I'm going to shower. I'll be back in a few hours. I was given the option of just staying home. They're like, it's been a long night. Stay home. I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to come back, because I know my unit guys who didn't show up the day of the incident are going to be there the next day. And those are the people I want to be around. Those are my guys. Like, those are the people. I don't want to be at home alone.
Yeah.
After this kind of an incident. It was a major incident.
Yeah.
I want to be amongst my guys, right? So good thing that they weren't there the day of the incident, because maybe, we would have all been there for 22 hours, and then we would all be alone at homes, right? In our own houses. I think it was a blessing that day they weren't there. After going home, taking a shower, changing, all that, maybe catching a quick nap, back to work. I was so happy to be around my guys, right? I did not want to be home, and nothing about that incident bothered me. It was just that I'm glad that I was able to be with my guys and share my whatever happened in the past 22 hours.
This is a great transition, I believe, in terms of what it is you're trying to do, because, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing is that you went through a critical incident and you really needed your trusted people who had experienced similar things to be able to debrief, discuss, get their assistance, get their input, get their help on, just to be able to just talk about it.
Exactly.
And the reality is, and again, this is what I see as what you're trying to do with boots on the ground in Alberta, is that not everybody has those connections.
That's the thing, right? Most of the times, like, I have noticed with myself too, like, a lot of times I'm not looking for a professional. I'm just looking for a buddy.
Right. Yeah.
And we say this again and again with our boots on the ground. I tell my people to keep reminding anybody who asks about boots on the ground. We are not professionals. We are not mental health professionals. We are not medical professionals of any sort. Nothing like that. We are just buddies. We are just, give me a call. Let's talk. Right? Like, I know I may not have been in the same incident and same situation as you have, but I have been in my own, and I understand what happens. If you, Larry, were to give me a call tomorrow and be like, hey, man, I just had a freaking major incident and I was, stuck on shift for 22 hours. Be like, you know what? I've been through that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's talk. And I'm not undermining any psychologist or any professional help, but hey, maybe in that moment, you didn't need a professional help. You just needed a buddy to talk to who had been through similar situation as you have, right?
Absolutely.
And that's all I needed at that time, right? Like, I didn't need to go to a doctorate. I've never even discussed that with any professional. I always credited my friends for being there and just for listening to me. And that's what I want to provide other people, where it's like, first, let me say this out. We don't have our phone lines launched yet. We are aiming for September 2023. So we gave ourselves 1 year to set up 100% and, be able to provide as good of a service as we can. So one day, if somebody calls us and they say, if they want to say that they are a police officer, there's a chance that the person who has answered the phone from our side may not be a police officer, but they might be a firefighter, they might be EMS person, they might be a correctional officer, they might be a military member. So they are a pal in uniform. Sometimes I don't want to talk to somebody who's not in service. I don't want to talk to a professional. I don't want to talk to my family. I may not even want to talk to my coworkers, but I would like to talk to somebody who has been in uniform, who understands my things, or doesn't necessarily understand my job, but understands the stress that comes with it, because they wear a uniform as well. And they understand that part. My prime example is my brother-in-law. He's EMS paramedic. I don't know what he does for his work. He doesn't know what I do for mine, but we could talk for hours.
Absolutely.
I think that we just have that connection of, whatever, blue family, if you want to call it. And that's what we are looking to provide. Hopefully September of 2023 is that added resource, right? Like another resource.
It's very important as well, because when you just talk about the options people have about going and seeing someone professional, like let's just say a psychologist. I don't know what it's like in Alberta right now, but I know in my end of the world, well, I have friends that are having a very difficult time finding a psychologist, finding someone they trust, finding a psychologist who has enough time to take just the appointment times that they need to be seeing a person once a week, twice a week, whatever. So those options aren't always there. I mean, I personally am blessed that my psychologist has been absolutely fantastic. However, I can also safely say when I was struggling, I did not want to reach out for help because I didn't know where to go. And I was afraid of stigmas and stereotypes. I was afraid of being, fucking tossed out of the job or seen as I can't do this work, or there's something wrong with me, or I'm broken. And I think it's important actually that you speak with someone outside of your agency. And that becomes a huge issue, is as much as your agency itself could have things set up. For me, I just wasn't comfortable because I felt that meant it could end up on my file. There'd be some concerns down the road. So I love the fact with Boots on the Ground, you're going to have law enforcement officers, firefighters, paramedics, emergency dispatch. I mean, you're speaking to someone who has been through the shit.
Yeah, and nurses as well. And because we understand that, different professions go through shit, and then our binding glue is the shit.
Exactly. Yeah, it is.
We want to be there for each other whenever needed. With mental health professionals, you may not have that resource available 24 hours a day. We will be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. Somebody's always going to be available to take the call as required. And another thing that we are going to have on our website once we start providing services, we do have a therapist on my team, and she is well aware with the first response world. Her boyfriend is one himself, and she is a qualified therapist, and she has the clinical overwatch for Boots on the Ground Alberta. And we are going to publish a resource page, which is going to have therapists, psychologists. We are going to ask people to apply to us. We are going to interview them. We are going to see, who's the best fit for first response world that has experience with first responders. And we are going to publish those on our website.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that way you go on our resource page and you know that these people have been vetted, they have been interviewed, and they have experience with first responders. Give them a call.
Absolutely. Again, to get just back to my personal, I was very lucky that I just typed in psychologist and PTSD and was lucky enough to find someone in my area who was qualified, and she's been absolutely perfect for me. Again, there's no one I trust more to be able to just completely be myself to, but that's what it comes down to, is just your ability to actually talk. And there is no Boots on the Ground, Nova Scotia, where I am. Again, there's a lack of such an organization to be there to help people. So what am I trying to do? Well, it's exactly this, is trying to get the word out to let people know they just need to talk. Because ultimately, I mean, Mo, I presume you would agree, that's the key, is talking about it and not to keep sweeping it under the rug, which I know I'm guilty of for years, of sweeping it under the rug.
You're 100% correct. I talk to so many people. I am one of them. I'm guilty of that. I don't have a therapist. I don't have a permanent one anyway. And a lot of times the reason for that is, one, it's a problem jibing with somebody. It takes a lot of time to, find the right fit. Somebody who understands you, and somebody, because you got to open up about a lot of stuff,
Trust is huge. Trust becomes the biggest thing, and you don't just click with that person, right? It takes time to develop.
Yep. But then how many times it's like having your first date, like you go to them the first time and then you don't return to them. And I'm guilty of that. It's because I go the first time and we have that talk therapy, and then I feel good. And, I let it out and I feel good. Then I don't go back, and then months go by and then I feel something else, and then I go back, and then, it's like starting over again, right? Like first day. Right. And then we talk again and I feel good, and then I don't go back. It's like, so talking does have the power. It's not a long-term solution, I'm sure, but it is provide you with that comfort for that time being. And then we will hopefully help come up with the proper plan of how you're going to treat it long-term and all that stuff, and just guide you to the right resources. But talking has that power of just letting it out. So many times we hold it in for so long that we don't let it out. Then one day you do, and you're like, oh man, I feel so much lighter. So much lighter. I got to vent,
Yeah,
I got to
yeah,
bitch. I got to vent. I got to freaking just say my part. Everything that's been boiling inside me, I got to say it.
yeah. Something as simplistic as I got to realize that this is normal, that this is a normal reaction to the amount of trauma or, like we said earlier, shit
Yeah.
that we've seen.
Yep. 100%. 100%. Like we need to unload ourselves somewhere. And that's what we try to do. Everybody who takes a call is going to be trained in certain things, including critical incident stress management, applied suicide intervention skills training, mental health first aid. So they are going to be first aiders. You're not just calling just, I guess, a random first responder either, right? Like those aren't the greatest either. Like you can't rely on somebody who is too macho, if you want to, I don't know if that's the right term to use here. There's some, meh, get over it.
No,
No,
yeah, well, yeah, you
yeah,
don't want the whole suck it up buttercup kind of
yeah,
conversation. That's just shit. Yeah.
yeah. So it's gonna be like our guys are gonna be trained in that, but they're certainly not professionals. From 6 months to a year, our mission is to make sure all our volunteers are trained up, and that's what we're here for. We're just here to provide that listening ear, that buddy, talk to a person instead of a bottle or a bullet.
Absolutely. You put it as blunt as it can be, which is true. I mean, there is a suicide epidemic amongst first responders and military members
Yep.
that really something needs to be done about it. And at least creating an atmosphere where you feel safe to talk. Because I want to make sure I hit on this. And I know you've said it a few times, but as a caller, you remain anonymous. So you don't
Yep.
have to say anything about yourself other than just have the ability to talk to another person who's been through the shit.
We are still, of course, setting up our. We got to be following the training manuals from Ontario because that's already established, of course. And part of that is we don't ask you what your name is. We don't ask you anything. You call.
Yeah,
You
it's
need
great.
help. Let's talk. Right?
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Mo, so you're the first one outside of Ontario that's done this, right?
We are the first division of boots on the ground. Yes.
And are there any other ones?
No, it's just Alberta and Ontario. Yeah. Well,
Okay,
Ontario being the headquarters, I guess. So there's boots on the ground, and then there's boots on the ground Alberta.
gotcha. Mo, in order to get this off the ground, I guess, because that's the process you're in right now, is to actually have it fully operational.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you guys need? Are you still looking for volunteers? Are you looking for people to donate and help in some way? What are you guys looking for?
Yes, so those are the two things that we are actually looking for. One is volunteers for sure. So if anybody who is a first responder, nurse, a military member, veteran, retired, serving, you could go to our website, which is botgalberta.com. Botgalberta.com. It's different than Boots on the Ground's website. And in there, you could go to the recruitment link. You could send us an inquiry to get more information on our recruitment process. We do require a resume and a cover letter. We will get back to you within 48 hours. You could send it, it's mentioned on the website too, but you send it to recruitment@botgalberta.com. Somebody will get back to you within 48 hours. We go through the process. We send you an application package after that. So you send us back your application package. We do an interview, we do some reference checks, and then we go from there. Once you have passed the interview process, we get you trained up in the trainings that I mentioned. You don't pay anything. We pay for those classes. For that, we need funds. So we have applied to be a charity. Boots on the Ground, that's the Ontario, the head body. They are a registered charity. We have applied for our own charity number. We haven't received it yet. But right now, we have a donations page open online. It has all the instructions still, botgalberta.com. And then from there, you could go into donations where we could receive donations, and tax receipt could be issued upon request. And then there's business sponsorship kind of thing. If you're a business, there are different sponsorship levels: bronze, silver, gold, and partner. And it comes with this little perks that are also mentioned on the website, like displaying of your company logo or mentioning of your company name and all that stuff on our website, mentioned as our sponsors. That's where we generate our funds to train our volunteers. But we need volunteers.
Yeah, you need volunteers. People need to go to BOTG Alberta. That's Bravo Oscar Tango Golf Alberta.com,
Yes.
and you'll get all the information you need there.
Yes.
Mo, are you looking for just people in Alberta, or can anyone across the country apply?
We would love to have people from all over the country, but unfortunately just Alberta because of the insurance purposes.
And is it anywhere throughout Alberta, or do they have to be centrally located?
Nope, throughout Alberta. Because the nature of the job, I guess, or nature of the volunteer work is going to be over the phone. So it's at home work kind of deal. We ask for a minimum commitment of 16 hours a month, so 2 shifts a month. Any first responder, nurse, military member from anywhere in Alberta can apply.
That's phenomenal. So, I mean, I just want to make sure I repeat that. Any first responder includes firefighters, paramedics, police, dispatch operators, any military members,
Correctional officers.
correctional officers, nurses. There's a need. And so it's an easy thing. It's I mean, I'll just cut it down to it's a great thing to have on your resume or to move on besides just doing an absolutely fantastic thing. Because if you are in one of these positions, I would be surprised that you have not yet had a need to talk to somebody. And if not, it's coming.
Unfortunately, yes, it's coming.
If there's people outside of Alberta that want to be able to help somehow, is there anything else that can be done? Is it just the ability to make donations? Should people be speaking to Dave McLennan in Ontario about expanding? Anything you can add to that?
Yes, so anybody who would like to expand into their province, they could definitely reach out to Dave. Their website is bootsontheground.ca. For Alberta, anybody could donate to us for sure.
What's the end game on this? Where do you see this going, and what is your ultimate goal here?
Provide the best service we can and save some lives and provide people with another resource to talk to. That's really, there's no other goal for Boots on the Ground. Like, we are not, nobody at Boots on the Ground gets paid, nothing like that, myself included, I'm the president. It's not that we are trying to build a big company or anything like that. All we want to do is launch our helplines by September, hopefully, and provide the best service we can.
That's phenomenal, brother. I mean, I'm a huge fan of what you're trying to do out here, because it's one thing to sort of go, all right, we'll just set up in Ontario. No, it's nice. It's too bad we can't do it. But I love the fact that you stuck with it. You've obviously put a ton of time into this. I know you're a very busy man, and I genuinely appreciate your time to talk to us about this. But I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's very, very muchly needed. Again, so many friends that I know of that are struggling, that just, it's that trust issue. It's that even afraid to talk to someone, like you said earlier, on your team or at your service because you're concerned about it leaking or whatever. I mean, you get scared. I mean, I don't give a shit. People get freaking scared when you have this because you don't know what the fuck is wrong with you. And it's tough. So just the fact that people have somewhere to call and speak to someone who has experienced this, because again, I know I would have some trouble calling, no offense, but to call a civilian who has never experienced any of this stuff or doesn't understand what I'm saying when I start using phonetic letters or when I start using 10 codes or when I, whatever, that it just breaks down the communication. And if I spend more time trying to explain than I do talking about the problem, well, then I tap out. You've lost me and it's not there. So this is fantastic. Well, this is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you very much.
This is your time, man. Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Anything you'd like to say? Any calls you want to make out to people? I mean, members that are out in, Calgary Police, Edmonton Police, all the police services around, the RCMP and KDIV. Again, there's a load of correctional officers and firefighters and military members out there, nurses, paramedics, dispatch officers. I mean, 16 hours a month is not much, and you know what a difference that can make. Again, more than anyone, you know what a difference that can make. Mo, is there anything else you want to add?
That's all I was going to say. Like, we need you. It's a little bit of your time. It's going to make a huge difference in somebody's life. We need you. Please apply to us. Come to us. Your service is going to be greatly appreciated. I understand. You know what? One of the concerns I had brought up when we were first going through I'm like, you know what? We are asking for a bunch of first responders to join. First responders who are set in their careers. They're not going to have a resume or a cover letter, right? But it's a small inconvenience, if you want to call it, to have if you are going to be in the business of saving lives of your peers. these are your blue family, right? Like you could go through a bit of a inconvenience to fix that up. Please apply to us. We need you. We want you. And anybody else who could, donate, please donate. We need those funds to operate, to like just for to cover our operation costs, to cover our training costs, all that stuff. Like once we become functional, there's going to be phone bills, because it's going to be a helpline. So we're going to need those funds. So please apply to us. Please donate as much as you can, and hopefully we get us off the ground in September.
Fantastic, man. I wish you absolutely nothing but the best of luck with this. I mean, there's a lot of work, but I have little doubt in my mind that this will be a great success, Mo. Thank you so much for your time and coming to talk to us about this. I'd love to talk to you again once it's up and running in September, and if we need to make any more calls out to people to, get this moving, get this happening for some more help, it'd be fantastic for us to do.
Thanks a lot, Larry. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you very much, and to everyone who's listening, I really appreciate your time for tuning in. My name is Larry Payton. I have your 6. Please have mine.
Don't go away. There's so much left to do, so many things I wanna say, and I sing. Don't make the change. If it rains every single day, I'll fight to blow it all away.